Hello there, Pursuing Freedom community. Thanks as always for tuning in today. And if you're here for the very first time, well, you're in for a great show. I've got an incredible guest with us today. And if you've been hanging around and visiting and tuning in for a while, thank you for your continued support. And I'm excited today to introduce you to my new friend, Rocky Lalvani. And I discovered Rocky through his podcast, actually, which I'm super interested in the dichotomy, I guess, in my brain of he's the profit answer man and a certified profit first professional. If you haven't read the book Profit First as a business owner, highly recommend. And Rocky's a certified coach or trainer for them, I believe, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But he also has a podcast called Richer Soul, Living a Life on Purpose. And I thought, what better guest for the Pursuing Freedom podcast, where we pursue the philosophy that the goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from, and that, in fact, we can have the best of both worlds, a fulfilling life, a purpose-driven life, and a purpose-driven business that really finances that life. And so I know a lot of people listening that have achieved financial success, but maybe you don't have a plan for your dollars, or maybe you need some guidance in that regard, or maybe you're achieving financial success at a high level, but you've lost yourself in the process. So I think both of these avenues are going to be fun to explore. So I don't want to waste any more time. With no further ado, let's introduce Rocky. Thank you so much for being with us today, Rocky.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, give us a little bit of a backstory, because I know you've got an extraordinary story. And obviously, we only have, the attention span of the real estate professionals, maybe 30 minutes. So give us the cliff notes, but tell us how you got to where you are today and what makes you so passionate about what you teach about, what you speak about, and all the things.
So I'm an immigrant to the United States. My parents came here when I was very, very young. And one of the things they did was they would get together with their friends who had also immigrated, and they would talk about money and real estate and life and success and all of these different things. So even though we started off where they had to restart life, they quickly moved up that economic ladder. So unlike today, back then kids had to sit on the floor and listen. Like there was no iPhone. You just kind of got stuck listening to the adults go on and on. So I got a financial education, and I just didn't realize that wasn't normal. And at that young age, for whatever reason, I knew I wanted to make money. So as a kid, I was very entrepreneurial. And I was also very techie. And so those two things kind of merged. Part of that was an early love of spreadsheets when they first came out back in, the first computers and so forth. And then the entrepreneurial spirit, realizing that real estate was a path to be able to make money. So in high school, actually in college, I got my real estate license and I sold houses, and I kept the license, but I didn't pursue it too much. I also learned how to do a lot of the work around the house. My dad wasn't super successful, so when the roof needed done or the bathroom needed remodeled or stuff needed to get fixed, I did it. So I learned how to do the real estate parts, and I understood the principles of real estate, but I waited forever to actually buy my rentals, start flipping houses and do all of that. But I got a job because that's what you end up doing, right? Go to college, get a job, follow the American dream. Because I was, the techie and the spreadsheets, I just calculated what I needed to do to build wealth, and I did it. As a W-2 employee, I just automated my savings, and I allowed it to continue to grow in multiple ways. And at some point in life, though, you end up with all the money and you're like, well, what happened to the happiness? And so that kind of started that second journey of how do I create a life that I'm happy with? What really does matter? And that was what kind of got to the first podcast, which you had mentioned. The tagline was, you got rich, now what? Because it didn't do it. And then along that journey, it was also, hey, let me help other people with money. And that's more of a struggle because everyone wants to get rich this weekend. Nobody wants to get rich slowly. And so we really had issues trying to figure out that marketing message. And then I learned that business owners didn't look at their finances. I'm like, what do you mean? How do you run a business and not look at your finances? And so that was kind of that last shift where I was like, I will work with business owners, help them look at their numbers, because they are willing to invest in and work with that. And so that's how I ended up in with the Profit First program and partnering with them because everything Mike talks about in the book, that's the way I live my life. So it was so natural for me that I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And I walked away from a nice corporate job and said, I'm going to build my business doing what I love and have fun.
Okay, so I have a lot to unpack here, but before I go too far down the rabbit hole, I do want to touch upon this program that you're talking about. So you help high level entrepreneurs who are earning at a high level basically have better organization of their finances. And in what capacity are you doing it for them, with them, versus advising them on how to do it?
We don't do bookkeeping. We don't do tax. I am very familiar with tax. I'm an enrolled agent. I will look at their taxes to make sure they're in alignment. What we basically do is we look at their business model and we say, what is the math of this business model? So every business has the same basic structures, right? If you look at real estate, there's a million ways to do real estate. And there's different business models, but at the end of the day, you got to cash flow, you got to make money. Same thing in business. And so in business, what we're looking at, what drives your revenue? So that's all the marketing, the conversion, the selling price, everything else. So how do we drive revenue? The second thing we look at is, okay, now that we drove your revenue, which is all everybody looks at in the world of real estate, they all go, how many doors you got? Like, who cares how many doors I have? I care how much cash I have, right? Same thing in business. They're like, oh, what's my top line revenue? Who cares? How much did you keep? So the
Yeah.
next bucket is, okay, here's our revenue. What do we actually end up with in profit? Right? So your P&L, how do we manage all of the delivery of your services and the overhead? Now, here's the scary thing. Profit doesn't equal cash. And you know this in the world of real estate. I can buy a house, no money down, Carlton Sheets. And so profit and cash don't always equal each other. And it's especially true in business. So the third thing that we look at is how do we cash flow? How do we cash flow for growth? And even if you take real estate, if you're a flipper, you start flipping a bunch of houses, how are you going to cash flow all those renos? Are you going to be able to do it? Same thing if you're doing rental real estate. How long from the time you secure a house, put down a down payment, come in, reno it till you actually start getting cash back in the way of rent? Like, what does all of that flow out to? And we do that for business owners, we do it for real estate people. We help them understand all of that. The reality is, when you do the math of your business, which nobody wants to do, math is a dirty word, we can figure out the leverage points. We go, hey, when you do things this way, you barely work and you make lots of money. Whereas when you do things this way, you work really hard and you barely make any money. So it's a choice. How about we work really little and make lots of money?
Yeah. So let me ask you something. And this is just more of a curiosity than anything, because with some of the people that I work with, there is a clear distinction between those who have a tangible relationship with money, where they love looking at the numbers, they feel more energized when money's going well, when it's coming in, when it's not going well, they feel paralyzed, debilitating, etc. And then you've got the other ones who they've got this very intangible relationship where money's just a means to an end, and I can always make more money, and as long as I make X, and there's not really any system with the money. So, as it relates to mindset, which I know you're heavy on, and when you're approaching the analysis of somebody's financial situation and you're finding those gaps that can be shored up to improve cash flow, let's just say, right? How do you address the piece where the abundance versus the scarcity of, like, do I pull back to create more cash flow, or do I drive the revenue more to create more cash flow and have a belief in the abundance ability to, to grow that revenue and keep my baseline expenses the same? You know what I mean? Does that make sense as a question?
It does. So, couple of things here. The first question I ask every guest on my podcast is, how did you grow up and how'd you learn about money? Because I want to understand their money mindset. The first question I ask a brand new client is, how'd you grow up? How'd you learn about money? I
Mm,
want to understand their money mindsets because I need to know where they're coming from. Because it doesn't matter what I say, it matters what their belief structures are.
love that.
And so the first thing we want to do is understand where they're at. The second thing we want to understand is what is the goal of your business? Do you want a big, massive business? Why? For what purpose? And is that the best way to do it? So I mean, because everyone's kind of in the world of real estate, let's say I'm going to go flip a property. Well, if I'm going to flip a $100,000 house, put 20 into it and walk away with 200, that's a lower risk, right? I make 80 grand on that deal, so to speak. But let's say I want to do $1 million deal and say I go do $1 million deal and I put 200 in it and I walk away with 350. Okay, I did walk away with more money, but was it worth the risk? Was it worth all of the things that are involved in it? Is that what I really want to do? Do I want to stay awake at night because I got, $1 million out there? Or do I prefer the fact that, hey, you know what? It's 100 grand. I can sleep better with that. And then where is the least amount of effort going to get me the best return? So do I have to do 10 houses at 100 or one big deal? There's no right answer. There's the answer for you in your market with your skill set and your belief system. So we do look at that, but the bigger part of what we're going to do is we'll run the math and it's like, I don't care how and what you do, you're smoking dope if you think this deal's going to cash flow and you're going to walk away with a check because nothing says it's going to happen. In other words, all your prices for your contractors, you paid double to every contractor before. Why do you think it just went down by 50%? You tell me this is the after repair value, but yet there isn't a single house in that area that sold for that. Right? So too much of the dreamer. So it really depends. Some people have great vision. They can see something and turn it around. Like for example, when we were flipping houses, we're in an area that nobody buys a two-bedroom, but we bought two bedrooms. But we only bought two bedrooms that we could turn into three bedrooms. So that was our thing and nobody could see, wait a minute, I can turn a two into a three easily. I didn't think about that. And so we got those deals. Or when they stole the plumbing, we're like, yeah, take the copper. We know how to replace it super cheap. I just put PEX in. No big deal. We got to do it anyway. So it's seeing the opportunity, seeing your skill sets, matching everything up to you, your business model, your desire, your skills.
What is the biggest struggle that you've seen with entrepreneurs that you work with as it relates to, I would say, the integration of your approach as the profit answer man and your living a life on purpose? Where do you see people getting stuck?
At the beginning. And what I mean by that is they've never defined what they want their life to
Mm.
look like. They've never defined how their business is supposed to serve them instead of them being a slave to their business. They got into something because somebody said it was good or they thought there was an opportunity or whatever. Life puts you in situations if you haven't taken the time to think and say, is this what is right for me? My skill sets, my desires, the way I want to live my life, and the things that I enjoy doing, that's the biggest problem. The second thing is they don't do the math for the business. We can sit down at the beginning and figure out how profitable a business is going to be. Am I going to be right all the time? No. But I can come up with a pretty good idea of what it looks like. And then we test and we adapt. But if we sit down and we look at it to begin with and it's not going to work, well, why would you waste so much time doing it? And I think too often business owners do just that. They don't actually understand all of those. And then they spend the money as soon as they get it. So take real estate agents, right? You get paid a commission. Did you forget about taxes? Do you not put the money aside the moment it comes in to cover taxes? And if this is a great month, do you take the extra and set it aside because you know next month is slow? You already know what next month is because you already know what your closing schedule is. Like we can predict that out. I work with builders. We can predict out their cash flow for 6 to 9 months of what's coming in and whether they can sleep tonight or not. So those are the things that nobody bothers to do until they get to a big company. And you're not going to get to a big company if you don't do them as a little company, unless you're super lucky.
It's interesting because when you talked earlier about belief, and what I see with a lot of my clients, especially the ones that are the top producers, but they're just drowning in their own success. They can't slow down now to create a better plan, and they don't slow down to find the clarity around what they want or whatever it is, right? And we look at this and we assess the core issue is that I think a lot of them didn't know what they were capable of when they started. So rather than, like you said, get clear on what you want your life to look like and then design a business model that's going to finance that vision, they just start throwing stuff against the wall. They're in insecurity, and eventually stuff starts sticking, and it's like they build this structure, which is their business, on this faulty foundation. And I like to help people see that sometimes you're going to have to take the house down to the studs to evaluate the foundation, which comes back to, like, if you had started with a clear vision.
I've had business owners thank me for telling them that their business model is not viable. And they're like, had you not said this to me in a delicate way, 8 years from now, I'd still be banging my head against the wall, not making money.
Yeah, totally. Well, talk to us about your turning point. I mean, you talked about, I'm also laughing because as you started to share your story earlier, you're like, then I just made a lot of money, and you were talking about how your parents would talk about money and business and success, and I was thinking to myself, man, I wish I was a fly on the wall in those conversations. And just literally 2 days ago, my 11-year-old daughter, we're driving in the car, and my husband and I took them on a 6-month RV road trip and homeschooled during COVID, and we're real estate investors, so we're always talking real estate. We're always looking at houses, and they always think we're going to move them again because they've also moved a lot as a result of our real estate investing journey. But we were talking about something the other day, and she goes, "Are you going to start talking about money again, Mom?" And I'm like, "Not right now, but if I wanted to, I will." And I mean, when I want to, I do, because I want you to be prepared, because you're right. It's not a common conversation in American households. It's fascinating that it was for you as a child, and how it led to you just having this entrepreneurial spirit, which is what I pray my children will have as a result of absorbing all this from my husband and me. But anyway, I want to talk to you about how you had the entrepreneurial spirit, you're selling houses, you're flipping houses, you take the good corporate job, you make a plan for your dollars. That's extraordinary. And then you find yourself succeeding financially, but feeling that lack of purpose. Like, what was your wake up call? What was the turning point? And was there any fear around taking a leap in a different direction at that point?
Yes, there was fear. There's always fear. Will it work? I made sure I had a massive runway. And I'm in a mastermind group. I know you are too. They would all yell at me. They're like, "You got too big a runway. You're too comfortable." I'm like, "It's okay. This is the way I want to do it. I don't need to be a million miles an hour doing this." It was, and I was slowly trying to figure out what it is that I really wanted to do and trying to build a business plan around it. A lot of the personal finance, real estate stuff, as far as the teaching and working with people, didn't resonate, didn't work out, didn't catch on. With Profit First, it seemed like it was going to catch on. I spent a lot of time talking to people. They're like, yes, this is a problem. Yes, people will pay you. Yes, it should work. I looked at multiple systems and picked the one that was most in alignment with me and the way that I wanted to do things. But yes, it's still scary to walk away from something like that. The thing was, I started to get a push. So for most of my corporate life, I learned how to get stuff done, like the 4-hour work week thing. So I
Mhm.
wasn't killing myself working, but I was making good money. I had freedom. When that turned, that was kind of the kick. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore. I don't want to go play it with somebody else for one more hurrah. If I don't do this now, I'm going to look at the mirror with regret if this thing takes off like I hope it will. And that's what happened. And so now I have no regrets because I left at that point and did it. And it was at the right point in my life too, just other things happening. So everything came in alignment at that moment.
I look back on my own experience of feeling fear, feeling called to something different or more, having a million reasons, what my brain telling me why I shouldn't, why I can't, that's not realistic, that's not even maybe responsible. What are you thinking? Everything's going fine. And then you do it anyway, and it turns out to be one of the best decisions of your life, right? So over the years of this becoming a game almost of I feel a calling, I notice fear, I act in spite of it. Do you have a process for your own, for yourself and also for your clients, when you know something needs to change and you can see the fear, you can hear the stories that become the excuses, and you're like, no, 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 like, how did you navigate it for yourself, I guess, and then how do you help others?
I don't have the fear anymore. Like, if you came to me and said XYZ is happening in the business, I'm like, all right, we just have to pivot. We'll do something different. Like, I've changed my whole mindset and the way I look at that. For clients, it really depends on where they're at. One of the first things, and we just offer this as a free service for all our clients. I'm like, would you like to do a life plan while we also do your business plans? And if you do, I use a book called Living Forward. It's Michael Hyatt's program. He's
Mm.
got it's an easy read book. They've got the templates for how to build a life plan. And so I'll just offer my clients, hey, if you want to go do this, I will sit with you and help you build a life plan. And what that is it's looking at every part of your life, including your business, and defining it. And you start with your eulogy and then you work backwards from there. Okay, if this is the person I want to be when I die, what do I have to do that? You'd be shocked at how many people are afraid to do that. There's a lot of fear and trepidation, and I don't understand why, but I don't know. People just seem afraid to define what they want.
For fear it may not happen, right? Or that is not realistic, or that it's going to be too much sacrifice or whatever. I hear
Well,
it all
but
the
then
time.
you know that. If it's a sacrifice and you say that's too much, then let go of that dream. I do that all the time. I'm like, you know what? That's really cool, but I don't want to make the sacrifice for that. Then I'm okay with it because I realize that's what it's going to take, and I realize I don't want to do it.
What do you think about the dance between sort of contentment and ambition as it relates to, there's been times where when I look around at the life that we've curated for ourselves, because we've been living a life by design now for a long time. And I sometimes find myself saying to my husband, like, what if this is it? Like we're in the thing we once dreamed of. Like our now reality was once just a concept or a pipe dream. And that feeling of satisfaction and enjoyment of the now with the expansion to what's becoming and unfolding. And I sometimes feel like there's a dance, and because you spend a lot of time with successful people, that can get lost in the ambition, right? That goalpost keeps moving. The ambition becomes at the expense of enjoying the now, but you can also go too far to contentment where it becomes complacency. So, like, what's your perspective on that little spectrum, I guess, of being in the present moment while experiencing the joy of the unfolding?
So I think that is the internal journey versus the external journey. If you're moving goalposts, you're playing an external game that you will never win. You will just keep grinding it out and pushing forward. The bigger it gets, the less the enjoyment. It is the internal game of fixing what's going on inside of you and all your issues and being content with the simplest of things. That's a deep journey that most people are unwilling to take, and you can't make someone take that journey. When they're ready, great. But I no longer try to convince anyone of anything. Like, hey, I'm here to help. If I can be with you, great. If not, good luck.
For you, was that innately there from your upbringing, or did you have to embark upon that journey, what I like to refer to as the inside out approach?
There was an internal journey, but there was also a bigger external motivation of, hey, I got to go get rich and I got to go do this and I got to go do that. But the seeds were always there. I've always had the upper limit of this is enough. And it's not enough necessarily money, it's enough time wise. I am not killing myself and giving up all my time for this at different stages in my life. So I was always there for my kids. It's funny because I was on a podcast, I think like maybe less than a year ago, and it was someone from my kid's school. And they're like, when you first showed up at school in kindergarten with your kids, I thought your wife worked and you were just like a stay at home dad because you were always there. I'm like, no, no, I actually work and make a ton of money. But I always designed my life to do the things that I thought were most important, being with our kids, having the freedom to do things, traveling, doing all those types of things was important as well.
So when you created the Richer Soul podcast, what was it that called you to start to share this living a life on purpose with
Hmm.
your community and your audience?
That was created because they told me I had to create content, and I'm not so good with writing. At least I didn't think I was. That was a mindset shift. So part of that was I didn't like to edit. And with my ADD, like I'd miss half the words when I typed it out. So it wasn't great.
Mhm.
I don't know what happened. And I learned better later, but math is simple. 2 + 2 = 4. I never learned in our English class how you structure a story, how you create a well-flowing written document. My kids actually learned that because I realized how important it was later. So the whole story I say that is I struggle to get content out, and people are like, "Hey, there's this thing called a podcast." I'm like, "Oh, I don't have to edit. I can just get on and talk to people and learn from them because I love questioning and having these deep conversations." And so it was a fit with me and how I did things in my skill set, and it just came together to be perfect. I didn't imagine that we'd be at 400 plus episodes. I don't know, 8 plus years later, I guess it is 9 years. I don't know what the numbers are.
And what's one of the highlights of the 400 episodes? I feel like that you meet some of the coolest people in the podcasting world, and it's so fun and energizing.
That's really the secret of the world of podcasting. People will come talk to me that wouldn't answer my phone call. So I get to have great conversation. We talked about like Tim Rhodes. I didn't reach out to Tim Rhodes. Tim Rhodes reached out to me over and over again. People that I'm like, oh, that guy's really cool. Maybe I should have him on my podcast. And then I don't send out the invite or don't pitch. And the next thing you know, like they're asking to come on the show. I'm like, cool. Let's do it. Those are fast responses. So you get to meet really cool people that you would not have otherwise met. And it gets me out of my circles, and it's really taken me to far and wide places.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that because I'm thinking in my head, he's a manifesting ninja just like me. I I can't tell you how many times I have an impulse in my morning routine or my meditation, and I write somebody's name down and I put a circle around it, and I never take action on it. And like within a week, I hear from them. They text me or message me on LinkedIn or they call me or whatever. And I'm like, I, I don't want to sound like a creep, but I wrote your name down in my journal the other day. Like I summoned you.
I will give you a wild one. I don't know if you read any philosophy stuff. Anthony DeMello, he wrote a book called Awareness. He's a Jesuit priest. And I was like, oh, this guy's really cool. I wish, one day I could maybe have him on my podcast. Well, he died in the 90s or 80s, maybe. Like, I guess that's not going to happen. Well, out of the blue, his foundation reaches out to me and they go, we're going to be publishing one of his books. Can the person who is in charge of the foundation come on and talk to you about Anthony's books? I'm like, hell yes.
I called you and you answered.
Yeah, from the dead. What are you going to do?
So good. So good. Okay. Well, I feel like this is a really great note to leave us on here because I don't want to take too much of your time. And you're one of those people I feel like I could go on for hours with. So I want to respect your time and just if you could share the best place for folks to learn about you or find you, follow you, etc.
Two things. If you're a business owner and you're struggling with the finances, or you want to take the finances to the next level, you want to scale and grow, Profit Answer Man is where we share everything about that. You want to go on the softer side of life, it's all at Richer Soul. So you pick what works for you. They each have their own audience, and some people listen to both.
I listen to both and I highly recommend both. So go and subscribe. And by the way, leave him a 5-star review after you've gotten inspired, you've learned something, you've taken away some action item. You know, some of us podcasters, we're out here thinking that we're just spewing information out into the world. Is anybody listening? Is anybody getting any value? So wherever you're consuming this content, if you're enjoying it, make sure to find that button, leave the 5-star review, do the same for Rocky, because it really does help us continue to attract amazing guests like Rocky and help this content get found so that we can all enjoy the journey of building a life we don't need a vacation from. As always, I love you. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.